All right. Hey, well, welcome everybody to class today. Not class, study group, I guess is what we're calling it. Appreciate you guys coming and learning more about X-ray, and it'll be good. So today's class will be half hour maybe, so it won't be that long. I just wanted to let everybody know that I've started to disperse the study guides. I was in Idaho Falls area, and I took a bunch to those 4 clinics as well as the 3 clinics in Logan. And the rest of them I'll probably have to send out, but you'll be getting them. It looks like this. Anyway, it's got a lot of good information in there. It kind of follows along with kind of what we're doing in the study group. So it'll be a good resource for you if you can add what we're doing here to that, and you'll be well on your way. So I've heard that there's some people getting ready to take the test. That's exciting. I hope that you guys know that I can be a resource for you before you take the test. If you have any questions, please let me know. We can discuss whatever you feel like you need to discuss, just so you feel like you're a little more ready for that exam. But I appreciate everybody's hard work and moving toward that goal. So let's switch screens here and get started here. I don't remember which one it is. There we go. Okay, so sorry. So can you guys see that okay? Anybody?
Yes, sir, I can.
Thanks, Noel. All right, so LSRT study group number 9. We're going to talk a little bit more about radiation safety today. It's always a fun topic for me anyway. But we're going to review a little bit, first of all, of last week's class. We talked a little bit about exposure factors, KVP and mass. Those are the 2 factors that we use most of all in our imaging. We learned a little bit more about how KVP controls the contrast of the image, or the quality of the image, or the standard energy of the X-ray beam is controlled by us setting the KVP. Okay, kilovolt potential is what it stands for. Mass controls the number of X-ray photons that we push through the X-ray tube down into the patient. So mass usually controls the density of the film that we're trying to take. If you ever have something that's underexposed, you're going to have to raise your mass in order to get that to expose correctly. And we'll talk more about that going forward, as far as how much we raise it and things of that. Just suffice it to know that KVP and mass are important. KVP controls quality, and mass controls quantity of X-rays. Okay. We talked about 3 different types of beam restrictions or collimators. Aperture diaphragm is one that you just don't see anymore. Cones and cylinders, those are the X-ray machines that are used in dentist's office. It comes up against you like this, and it's just coning that beam down. So we're just looking at 1 or 2 or 3 different teeth. It's just a way to take away the low energy photons, so you're not getting over radiated. And the type that we use is a variable aperture diaphragm, or a collimator. It just allows us to maintain the size of our X-ray beam, so we're not X-raying more than we need to. And we've learned that the smaller you can collimate to a body part, the better your picture is going to be. So just remember the 3 types of beam restrictions: aperture diaphragm, cones and cylinders, and variable aperture diaphragm, which is our collimator. Okay. We talked about filtration, how it reduces low energy photons by eliminating those completely as it's going through the beam, or through the opening of the beam. there's metal there that's going to stop the low energy photons from even hitting the body. So gives us a much cleaner picture. We talked about inherent filtration. Inherent filtration is the filtration that is built into your X-ray tube. So it's always there and it's always doing its job. For instance, the metal enclosure or the glass enclosure that goes around the catheter and the anode, and the oil surrounding that glass envelope, those are all types of inherent filtration. Okay. Let's see, we talked about post-patient filtration using X-ray grids. I showed you what a grid looks like, and everybody's got one. So what a grid is strips of lead in succession that help filter out excess X-ray photons that we don't need. Just remember what a grid is. It's a type of filtration. Okay, helps clean up scatter radiation. Grid ratio is the height of the lead strips and the spaces in between. Most of the ones that we use in our clinics are 8:1. So there's 8 strips per 1 inch of space. So anyway, okay, we talked about image receptors, types of image receptors. Here at Sterling Urgent Care, we use DR, which is direct radiography or digital radiography. And the other kind is analog, but we didn't talk much about analog. And CR, which is computed radiography. We talked about how the CR uses a PSP plate, and where digital or DDI, radiography, direct digital imaging, uses a charged coupled device as the image receptor, meaning it takes the picture in and immediately converts it to a digital image. That is the direct digital imaging that we're talking about. That's what we use in our clinics. Okay? We talked about the advantages of digital radiography, no dark room or stinky chemicals, improved image quality and workability after you take the image. You can take that image and if you have enough information there, you can make that image look the way you want it to look, okay? Which is optimal for diagnostics. So it's very, very workable. Less dose for the patient. We're using lower doses, a little bit higher KVPs, lower mass, and image storage and retrieval. So when we send our images to OnePax, that is where we store our images. OnePax actually does that for us, and we can retrieve those images whenever we want. Okay. Now it's important that we send our images to OnePax, whether it's going to be input for an interpretation or not. It's just good to have those images there. That way, if we have an issue with our X-ray machine or have a switch over, those images won't be lost. They're actually stored somewhere. So very important. Okay, let's talk about basic radiation safety today. So you're going to hear this a lot talking about X-ray. There's 3 basics of radiation safety: time, distance, and shielding. Okay, and we have talked a little bit about this. Time being the amount of time that we are producing X-ray. Okay, and the X-rays that we do, it's a very, very short exposure time, meaning less than a second on most of them. So, but yeah, time, that's what it means. In like CT, you're using a whole bunch of exposure, so the time is extensive. You're doing a scan and it takes 10 to 15 seconds. That's 10 to 15 seconds of radiation. So that's what it meant by time. The shorter the time, the less the radiation exposure. Okay. Distance, we talked about the inverse square law a couple of weeks ago. The further you get away from the source of the X-rays, the less the X-ray exposure is going to be. So Distance is your friend when you're trying to protect yourself from radiation. The best place to be is behind the X-ray counter, where there's a lead wall there in front of you. That's the best place to be. If you have to be out in the X-ray, it's best to be at least 6 feet away. It's been determined that 6 feet is kind of the rule of thumb as to where the X-ray photons lose energy. So just make sure you're as far away as you can if you can't be let it up. So shielding, we talked about that as well. The shields that we use are important. They're not as important as they used to be, however. You'll go to many places that don't use them at all. I'm in the camp of, if a patient wants lead to be used, use it. Especially if childbearing age or little ones, try to keep them covered up. Because you never know how many X-rays that kid or that woman is going to have in their lifetime. And we've learned that X-ray radiation is cumulative. So the more you get, the more you're exposed to, and the more damage that can be done. So time, distance, and shielding. Commit that to memory. So test question is, or what are 3 basic principles of radiation safety? Time, distance, shielding. Okay, very good. We'll move on here. Types of lead protection. Here's some different types of lead protection. Some of it is overkill. If you're doing a lot of fluoroscopy, which we don't do here, with a C-arm and surgery, or you're doing pain injections, they'll use fluoroscopy to guide the needle where they want it to go. And that's what we call live X-ray. And that's where those exposure times start to creep up, because you're just running the X-ray for a few seconds at a time. That's why it's important that if you're in that industry, you need glasses, thyroid shield, gloves. You need to be covered up, because you're getting a pretty large dose of X-ray. Fortunately, in our clinic settings, we don't have to worry too much about that. Most of our X-ray times are very short, and the amount of X-rays that we take are very little on one patient. Anyway, just be familiar with the types of lead aprons and shields that there are. So minimum lead equivalent, as per the ARRT, is 0.5 millimeters of thickness. You need to pay attention to that, because I think the dental is 0.25 millimeters. But for medical imaging, it has to be at least 0.5 millimeters thick to achieve the protection that they want you to achieve. So another test question, minimum lead equivalent, 0.5 millimeters thick, okay? Okay, so let's talk about dosimetry stuff for a minute. And dosimetry is these little badges that you need to be wearing when you're doing X-ray or at work. So let's read a little bit about those. Dosimeters. So commonly called a personal dosimeter or dosimetry badge or radiation badge, is a device that measures the absorbed dose of ionizing radiation for personal and occupational contact with radioactive materials or radiation emitting equipment, which is what we use. We're not handling radioactive materials at all. It's just the equipment that emits it. So these devices measure a worker's radiation dose in the occupational setting, which is what we are, ensuring their safety in environments with radioactive materials and radiation emitting equipment. Okay. So there's 2 types of badges right now. The first one is a TLD, which is a transluminescent badge, which is what we use. The majority of the badges that are sent out to us are TLD badges. Another type is the OSL, which is the optimally stimulated luminescent badge. Okay, and the difference in those two is that the TDL is actually exposed with heat, where the OSL is done by optical. I don't know what they call it. Let's say here. I'll try for limited radiation exposure. Okay, it's on the next page. Improve safety. Radiation badges have become more accurate over time, offering better protection for workers. If this badge isn't going to protect you from any x-rays, the way that it protects you is it keeps track of how much radiation you have been exposed to over time. So that's the way it's protecting you. And we'll talk about those limits here in a minute. Badges help ensure workers stay within a safe radiation limits and meet safety regulations. So it is important that we're using our dosimetry badges. Okay. Talk about the history of dosimetry badge. You're going to have to know a little bit about the history of why we use dosimetry badges. Okay, and I'm just going to read this. So, although Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen, he's the guy that discovered X-ray in 1895. Radiation safety didn't become a priority in the United States until the late 1920s. So they went 25 years without knowing that radiation is probably not real healthy for me. And, there's a lot of incidents that happened during that time. Formal recommendations were not universally accepted until the late 1940s. So it took them a while to figure out that radiation is bad in large doses. Before this time, some employees who worked with radiation would undergo blood tests a couple times a year that would analyze potential significant decreases in what occurred in white blood cells and platelet counts. This method was phased out in the 1950s when film badges became the first personal dosimetry. So you used to have to get your blood drawn to see if something was happening to your blood cells. Employees would wear early whole body film badges on the chest in combination with wrist badges. Film badges were not very sensitive, and adverse environmental conditions like temperature or humidity would easily skew the results. Employees had to exchange film badges every 2 weeks for processing, lab analysis, and reporting. So what a pain in the behind that was. You have to do that every 2 weeks. But they've come a long way, which we'll read about now. Originally, dosimeter service provided record results on index-sized dosimetry cards, documented an employee's cumulative external exposure to radiation. This process continued till the 1970s. In 1979, an early computer system replaced dosimetry cards, and film badges were soon outpaced in 1994 by thermal luminescent, or the TLD badges. In 1998, optically stimulated luminescence dosimeters became comparable to TLDs. Okay, so they're very comparable. Over the years, and with more technology developments, dosimeter badges have become more sensitive, which has made them better for protecting radiation workers. These essential difference between TLD and OSL dosimeter is that TLD requires heat, while the OSL dosimeter requires an optical stimulant. Okay, just know a little bit about what dosimeters are and a little bit of their history and how they protect us. And they protect us by keeping track of our accumulated dose of X-ray. Okay. Here at Sterling, we use TLD whole body dosimeters. TLD dosimeters are known for their high accuracy and precision in measuring radiation dose. TLD dosimeters should be worn between the torso and the shoulder, so in this area, okay, on either side. Okay, that needs, it's usually a taller level is where you want to wear your dosimetry badge. Mine hangs on my lanyard, which is pretty close to that area, and it seems to do a good job there. Yeah, make sure you're wearing it. It's a good idea just to attach those to your work badge, and that way when you put your work badge on, it's already there. We also use fetal monitors, going along with the TLD badge, body dosimeter. Okay, so if you become pregnant, you need to let us know or let me know, so we can get you a fetal manager badge or monitor badge. Okay. When wearing a fetal monitor along with a lead apron, it should be worn near the fetus under the lead shield. Okay, so we want to know exactly how much radiation that little kiddo's getting. That's why we wear it underneath the radiation or the lead shield at the level of the baby. Okay, that's how you properly wear a fetal monitor. So very important. If you do become pregnant, please let us know. We'll get you a fetal monitor on its way. So. Okay. Now, you'll notice when we receive our dosimeter badges quarterly, so every 3 months, there's going to be a control badge in there or two. It just says control on there. And those serve a specific purpose. It's basically measuring background radiation in your clinic. Okay. And I used to put them in the control area of the x-ray, which is okay. But it should be placed in the area where we store our badges. I have a picture of, this is from Rexburg. I took this yesterday. And you walk in the back door, and here's all the badges along with the name tags. You can see that they're all attached. That way, when these people put their badges on, their radiation badges ready to roll. Okay. Good job, Rexburg. Let's go. So this is where our control badge should be kept. And it's how that works is, like I said, it's detecting background radiation. So if we get the control badge back and say there's 1 milliram of radiation exposed to that badge, they take that one and subtract it from everybody's because they're assuming that there's a small amount of radiation, whether it be from the sun or various other things. They subtract that from your total. So they do serve a purpose. The control badge there is to detect background radiation. So, and I just went through that, so I really don't have to read it. Okay. Okay. So control badges should be kept in common areas where all badges are stored. Okay. I'm of the opinion that like Rexburg does, we do the same thing in Evanston. There's an area where those badges are kept, and you just leave it with your badge. You don't want to be taking it home with you or leaving it on the dash in your car. You're going to get way more exposure than you're really getting because it does detect minute amount of radiation, which come from several different purposes. So anyway, just keep it in mind. Try to keep your badge stored in the same place every night. Don't take it home with you. Just take good care of it, basically. And every 3 months, we'll get a new batch and we'll send those in, and we'll get a report back on everybody's radiation dosages. Now, another thing that I'm going to start doing, I delivered all of the Rexburg, Idaho Falls, North and South, and Chubbuck yesterday, along with the 3 Logan clinics. It's a full or a binder that has everybody's dosimetry reports in there for the last year. So if you're ever concerned or just want to know how much radiation you're getting exposed to, you can get in that folder, find your name, and you'll see what your exposure rate is. They're not very high, which is good, but I'm going to make sure that everybody has those. This is what I'm going to be sending to Sierra this week. She's got an inspection coming up this month. And the state of Idaho, especially, they need to know that we're keeping track of those records and know where they are. So just so you know that those binders will be coming to a clinic near you. So if you're ever worried about the radiation that you're getting, you'll be able to see that. Okay. All right. So limits of exposure. So for occupational employees, which is us, it's 1.25 REM or 12.5 millisieverts per quarter. That's not per year, that's per quarter. So if you're exceeding 1.25 REM per quarter, you're getting too much radiation and you need to take care of yourself. So for fetus exposure, the limit is 500 millirem or 5 millisieverts or less during the entire pregnancy. So fetus is only allowed 500 millirem. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, and it kind of doesn't to me either. But those numbers are there for references when we get our dosimetry reports back. Okay. General public exposure is 100 millirem or 1 millisievert per calendar year. So anybody walking out there in the sun, they shouldn't be getting more than 100 millirems of radiation. You'll need to be familiar with these numbers. It could be test questions. So what's the max for an occupational employee? It's 1.5 rem or 12.5 millisieverts per quarter. That's per quarter. Where the fetus one is per pregnancy, and the general public is per calendar year. Evaluation of exposure reports and maintenance of said reports should be available to all employees to view, which is what I'm working on, getting in all the clinics. And every time we get a new report, I'll be adding those to those folders. See, in order for dosimetry badges to be effective tools to monitor occupational radiation exposure, they must be worn. Okay, I know that this has been a struggle in the past. That people just don't want to wear their badges, but that they do serve a purpose, especially if you're going to be around working x-ray. It's important you wear those and keep track of what kind of dose you're being exposed to. Okay, a couple tips. Just get in the habit of wearing your Sterling badge or wearing it with your Sterling badge. Try not to store them in your car or to wear them outside, which I wore mine to Logan today. I didn't realize that it happens. Badges should be stored in a safe place when not in use. And we talked a little bit about that. So, okay, and there's your expert again. So we're almost done here. So maintenance of lead shields and aprons. Lead shielding should never be folded. Okay, I've seen in the past where lead shields have been folded and put in boxes. They always should hang from the shoulders or from the strap. This prevents cracks in the lead apron, which you don't want. You get cracks in there, and it's going to let radiation through. Let's see, lead shields should be hanged when at all possible, or even laid out flat on a surface. Lead shields should be inspected yearly, including visual inspection, and for worrisome areas, x-ray to look for cracks, okay? Areas of radiation can leak. So we need to inspect our lead shields yearly, make sure they're looking up to snuff. If they're starting to look a little bit rough, let us know, and we can get some new ones ordered. But you can tell if there's a crack in one of them. There'll be a crease, and under that crease is usually a crack, and we can come in and actually x-ray that and see if there is a crack, and if there is, we'll just replace it. So routine quarterly deep cleaning and sanitation should be completed. So every 3 months, we should just make it a deal where the same time we send our radiation badges, we should clean our shielding. I know that's something that we just probably goes to the wayside, but yeah, keeping those clean is a good idea. They're going to last longer and look better. So lead shields should be made available in all x-ray suites, which I believe they are available. Okay. All right, so we're just going to switch gears a little bit here. On the x-ray test, you're going to have to know a little bit about body habitus. Okay, and we talk about that in different types of physiology and anatomy stuff. Okay. Here's a look at the 4 types of body habitus. I thought this one was more helpful than any of the other ones. Sthenic, hyposthenic, hypersthenic, and asthenic. Okay, so those are the 4 types that you need to be familiar with. And let's go back and read what they say real quick. So sthenic is an average adult. Okay, average weight, average height. Moderately heavy build with organs oriented as such. So the thing you need to understand is the different body habitus. Your organs are going to be laid out a little bit differently. Okay. So, for instance, the heart is moderately transverse. Okay. And the lungs are of moderate length, so they're not really long or they're not really short, but they're right there. In the middle, diaphragm is moderately high. The colon is spread evenly with a slight dip in the transverse colon. You know, the sthenic is like the anatomical position guy. You know, ascending, transverse, descending. Okay, it's like a staple. But this says that the colon has a little bit of dip in the transverse. Gallbladders in the upper right abdomen. Okay, so asthenic is the next one right here. Okay, a little bit hunched over, a little bit smaller. Okay, known for very slender, ectomorphic, that is. Frail build with organs oriented as such. Okay, kind of like an old man. Heart is nearly vertical to the midline. Lungs are very long. Apices are above the clavicles and may be broad at the bases. So they're going to be up here, but they can come down and be pretty broad at the bottom. The diaphragm hangs low, which is making your lungs longer. Stomach is low near midline. Colon is low, folds on itself. Okay, gallbladder is relatively lower, close to the midline versus right upper quadrant. And that's about all I'm going to say about that. You just be familiar with what these four body habits are. Hyposthenic, let's look at that one. Hypo is a little bit shorter, you know, a little bit bigger build, looks like. Intermediate between sthenic and asthenic, between body habits, is also known as slender. Similar to asthenic, but the stomach, intestines, and gallbladder are situated relatively higher in the abdomen. Okay, and hypersthenic, you know, hyper we know means bigger, so that's a good way to remember that this is the bigger, heavier set body habitus. Also known as endomorphic, as a large build with the organs oriented as such. The heart axis is almost transverse, okay, so it's bigger this way. Okay, lungs are short, apices lie near the clavicles, so they're not going to be above the clavicles. Diaphragm is high, making the lungs shorter. The stomach is high, transverse, and in the middle. Colon around the periphery of the abdomen, and gallbladder is very high and on the right side. Here's kind of what we've been saying in picture form. You can see that the organs look a little bit different in all of them. Okay? You know, especially the colon. The hypersthenic is pretty much staple-like. Okay, whereas the sthenic is there's a dip in the transverse colon right here. Okay, and hypo is the bigger one, so the ascending is a little bit shorter. Goes clear up into the stomach area before it comes down. The aesthetic is just kind of droopy. Okay, but know how the stomach lies, know where the gallbladder lies, and kind of know how the intestine lies, as well as the heart. Okay, you can see the hypersthenic, which is the larger patient. It's going to be more transverse, so it's coming across there a little bit bigger. Where the aesthetic patient is pretty much straight up and down, everything quartered to the left side. So just be aware of what these four body habituses are for test purposes. We do deal a little bit with it as far as technique goes in X-ray, knowing it's a hyperthenic patient. We're going to use a little bit more mass to go through. Okay. And you know, if you were doing ultrasound or perhaps MRI and sometimes CT, it's good to know where the organs are in these different body habitus, so you know what you're seeing. So X-ray not so much, but you're still expected to know what they are. So, okay. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. I appreciate you being here. Keep a lookout for these study guides that are going to be coming your way the next couple of weeks. My advice is to use them. Study, get ready for this test and take it and get it out of the way. I'm excited for those that are getting ready to take it. I wish you guys the best of luck, and I'm here to help. If you have any questions, please reach out. I'm very, very happy to help.
Thanks, Eric.
Hey, thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it. See you guys. Have a
See ya.
nice weekend. See you, baby.